So I was contacted by one of my followers, and he said, when I relapse, I feel so guilty about it that everything just seems to get worse. I feel so bad about myself. I become even more likely to relapse again. I become more likely to engage in other bad habits. And it's as if my life is just going down, right? Everything gets worse. And so I'm wondering, how do I get rid of this guilt? And this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people experience guilt in this way, where it's just making things worse. It's not helping you out at all. And I've definitely been there myself as well. But I also know that things can get better. I used to be someone where guilt had a very strong negative influence on my life. And now I've gotten to the point where it doesn't, right? I don't think you can ever fully get rid of the guilt, because it's like an emotion, a feeling that you have, and I don't think you would even want to get rid of emotions like that. I think that's not possible. But it is possible to become in control of the guilt, to the extent where the guilt is no longer in control of you. And that's probably what you want to achieve. So that's exactly why I'm making this video. I'm gonna give you guys some tips on how to deal with that guilt. But before I get into these actual tips, I think there are two very important things that you need to know to help you to understand how guilt works. Because I think that a lot of people are experiencing guilt for the wrong reason. And I also think that guilt is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can actually be good to some extent. So the first thing, a lot of people have guilt for the wrong reason, including my follower who contacted me. Because when he asked his question, I asked him back. I said, well, why exactly are you feeling guilty? And he gave me perhaps one of the worst reasons he could have given, because he said, well, you told me that fapping is a bad thing, so therefore I feel guilty. And this is something that a lot of people seem to think. They feel guilty, they want to do NoFap because someone else told them that fapping is bad. A lot of people also say, well, I do it because my religion tells me that masturbating is a bad thing. And this is probably the worst reason to feel guilty. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that what a religion is saying is necessarily wrong. I'm not saying that what I am saying is wrong. I certainly hope not. But what I'm saying is that if you are doing it because someone else tells you to, if that is your reason to do NoFap, then that is a pretty horrible reason. A lot of people who do it for religious reasons, they don't even know why their religion tells them that masturbating is a bad thing. And so when you feel guilty for something and you don't even know why you are feeling guilty, right? You're just feeling guilty because other people tell you to feel guilty. That is an incredibly unhealthy reason to experience an emotion like that. And so you should always try to find out, why is your religion telling you that masturbating is a bad thing? And once you understand why it's telling you that, and you actually agree with it, and you actually think that it can apply to your own life as well, then you have a good reason to do NoFap. And then you have an actual reason to feel guilty, right? Because then you feel guilty because you broke your own goals. That is a pretty good reason to feel guilty. But you should never feel guilty just because other people tell you that you have done a bad thing. You should always try to understand why you've done a bad thing, and then you can make your own opinion on whether you actually think it's a bad thing or not. As long as you don't understand why it's a bad thing, then that's probably the worst reason to feel guilty about it. So that being said though, assuming that you feel guilty for the right reason, right? You feel guilty because you actually broke your own goal. Guilt is not actually a bad thing. Because if you look at it objectively, guilt is essentially an emotion. It's like a feedback mechanism to tell us that we have done something bad and that we might not want to do it again, right? And when it is your goal to do NoFap, right, is your goal not to watch the dirty videos, and you watch the dirty videos anyway, you relapse, you objectively do a bad thing. And so there is nothing wrong with experiencing the emotion that you have done a bad thing. Just like how it's not a bad thing to allow yourself to feel sad for a while if something sad happens. You know, like a loved one dies. Like, the very irony is that the more you try to suppress the emotion, the more that it actually has a negative effect on you. This applies to any emotion, right? If you are someone that has trouble processing your emotions, like for example, a loved one dies and you keep stuck with that, it negatively impacts your life for on the long term, right? You cannot deal with it emotionally. And you visit a psychologist and you ask him, hey, this stuff is negatively affecting my life. How do I get rid of the sadness? How do I suppress my sadness? The psychologist will obviously tell you, well, you should never suppress your sadness, right? That's the irony of emotions. The more that you try to suppress the emotion, the more that it actually keeps lingering around in a negative way in your life. The way that you really deal with the emotions is not by trying to get rid of the emotion, but by actually acknowledging the emotion, by actually allowing yourself to experience the emotion, allowing yourself to express it. Don't be afraid of it. And when you actually allow yourself to experience it, that's where you start to process it. And that's why it slowly starts to fade away over time to the point where you can actually move on with your life. And I think the same thing applies to guilt. I think so many people have like a bad relationship with the emotion of guilt, where they think that guilt is this horrible thing that they need to get rid of. And so the more that they think that it's a horrible thing and they try to get rid of it, that's actually one of the very reasons why guilt has such a negative impact on your life. And so that takes us to the part where I give you guys the actual tips. Now, I guess that the stuff that I just talked about kind of already contains some tips, but here are some solid points for you guys to follow. Number one, identify the source of the guilt. Try to become aware. Why are you feeling guilty? Are you feeling guilty because you broke your own goals? Or are you feeling guilty because you don't even know why other people are just telling you to feel guilty? And once you try to become aware of it like this, it becomes a lot easier to not feel guilty for the wrong reasons. Number two, realize that guilt is not a bad thing. I've just explained it. If you feel guilty, if you've done something bad, feel bad for a while. Allow yourself to feel bad for a while, learn your lesson, and move on with your life. Number three, be present in the current moment. This one is very important as well, because you cannot go back to the past. You cannot go to the future either. So there's absolutely no point obsessing over the fact that you relapsed yesterday, or the fact that you might relapse next week or next month. You cannot change anything about it. The only thing you can ever change is what you can do right now, today, right? So just make sure that today is a good day. Make sure that today is a day where you don't watch the dirty videos and where you work towards your goals or do whatever it is that you need to do. And then when tomorrow comes, you do the exact same thing again, because that is all you can ever do. And I think, guys, that if you follow these tips, that things will get drastically better. It has certainly worked for me. Again, I've gotten to the point where, the guilt does no longer control me in that very negative way. Whenever I feel guilty, I just feel guilty for a while. I allow myself to feel guilty. I learn my lesson, and then I move on with my life relatively quickly. And I'm pretty sure that this can work for you as well. There is absolutely hope, guys. Things will get better. So if you liked the video, click the like button, leave a comment below, click the subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.